Now, a couple weeks ago, maybe a month ago, I don't remember when exactly, I had an article on, I think it was in Las Vegas. There was another article in California about artificial turf. And one city I think it was in California. The city in California had banned natural grass and was putting in plastic grass, artificial turf, and then realized that the artificial turf is causing more problems, or at least they perceived that through various chemicals that are in the artificial turf. And then they banned artificial turf and went back to natural grass. So it's just an endless cycle of stupidity, and they don't, they're making decisions based upon who knows what. They're not getting information from, evidence-based sources. And California is full of scientists who are very knowledgeable in this area. And Nevada is too, New Mexico. I mean, there's very good turfgrass scientists in that area who could help these politicians, but I don't know if they ever reach out to them. Regardless. And then, so one was banned natural grass, then put in plastic, then banned plastic, put in natural grass. And then in Las Vegas, they're banning natural grass to put in plastic grass. I'm like, well, didn't you just, learn from California? They realized once they put in plastic grass, there's going to be another side effect. So who knows what's going on there. But a year or two ago, an article came out in The Guardian. It was about some work done in Boston. So this is a little bit of an older article. You guys may be aware of it. But this article is what I'm going to go over today, and it's entitled "Boston Bans Artificial Turf in Parks Due to Toxic Forever Chemicals." So for those who may not be familiar with toxic forever chemicals, I'm not. I'll just say that. I'm not a specialist in PFAS. But those are the compounds in artificial turf that are perceived, at least, probably true, but I'm not aware of it being true. I don't know. I'm not a specialist in this area, but the PFAS are forever chemicals and compounds that are in artificial turf, apparently. Boston's mayor, Michelle, this was a couple years ago, 2022. Michelle Wu, who has ordered no new artificial turf to be installed in city parks, making Boston the largest municipality in a small but growing number around the nation to limit use of products because it contains dangerous chemicals. All artificial turf is made with toxic PFAS compounds, and some is still produced with ground-up tires that can contain heavy metals, benzene, volatile organic carbon, and other carcinogens that can present a health threat. The material also emits high levels of methane, a potential greenhouse gas, and sheds microplastics and other chemicals into our waterways. Now, I want to make sure it's clear, because I'm going to show some other articles about how bad lawns are and turf grass are and all this nonsense that people spew out. And they don't have any evidence and don't provide any evidence to support that. And neither does this article. So even though I tend to lean towards believing some of this is true, they're still not providing any evidence. So, we got to look at both, my criteria for belief is the same on both sides, whether I tend to favor the belief or tend to not believe it. In this particular case, they don't provide any evidence. They're just saying stuff. Okay. I tend to think majority of it's probably fairly accurate, but I just want to make sure that's clear. I'm not entirely convinced. We already know there are toxic chemicals in the products, so why would we continue to utilize them and have children roll around on them when we have a safe alternative, which is natural grass? Asked Sarah Evans, an environmental health professor for the Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai. I don't know her. Maybe I can go read some of her articles. Beyond chemical risks, the fields can act as heat islands that increase playing field temperatures to as much as 200 degrees Fahrenheit, Evan noted. National Football League players are pressuring the league to ban artificial turf because of injuries, while the U.S. national soccer teams will only play on natural grass for the same reason. Now, I can tell you with a great deal of confidence that the temperature issue is accurate. You can go back and look at my Twitter account from 6, 7, 8 years ago. I took a photograph of natural grass right next to artificial grass at the research center in Florida. And I took a infrared photograph of it, so you can see the actual temperature of the artificial turf compared to natural turf, and it was light years apart. I just couldn't believe it. I don't forget the temperatures now; it's been ages, but 200 degrees Fahrenheit. It sounds a little high, but it was up there close to it compared to natural grass. It was substantially higher. Now that argument in the NFL falls apart if you're using natural grass indoors, obviously, where it's not near of an issue, where you're not absorbing the radiation from the sun. But this is in parks outside in Boston. The federal government estimates 12,000 synthetic turf fields exist in the United States, and at least 1,200 more are installed annually. Proponents say they are easier to maintain than grass fields and are not prone to flooding, though they do also require significant maintenance. The product is also increasingly used on playgrounds or as alternatives to lawns in drought-plagued regions. But in recent years, municipalities have begun limiting their use via bans or moratoriums, including at least 4 in Massachusetts before Boston, 2 in California's Bay Area, and several in Connecticut. In a statement to The Guardian, a spokesperson for WU said the city has a preference for grass playing surfaces wherever possible and will not be installing playing surfaces with PFAS chemicals moving forward. So again, I don't know if the PFAS issue is actually true. I'm not a specialist in this area, as I said. But if it is true that this artificial turf results in some sort of environmental harm or risk, then good for them, you know. Natural grass is one of the most amazing organisms on the planet. I mean, think about this. It's a plant that can be walked on and driven on and beat up and tore up, and it just keeps growing, keeps coming back. The root densities and the uniformity of roots across the soil is immense. I don't know if there's any plant on earth that even competes with the amount of roots per square inch or per square meter, and on the surface that, you know, maintains a sound uniform surface. It has a tremendous amount of ability to provide oxygen. I mean, there's an inordinate amount of benefits for natural grass. Now, we want to separate out any potential concerns between it. Are people concerned about the issues with natural grass in terms of, there's a group of people saying natural grass is evil and it's awful. Natural grass is fine. It's the management of the natural grass that I think we can agree upon needs work. But there's a group of people who are extreme and think natural grass is awful. Well, obviously it's not in Boston. They're saying natural grass, we're going to replace these artificial fields with natural grass. I think that's a good thing. It's an amazing organism. It's just the human component where we're doing things to the grass that are not within best management practices. That influence needs work, and it will always need work. We will always need to refine our management practices so we have minimal impact. So just want to make sure that's clear. It's not the grass. It's people managing the grass that oftentimes can result in the issue that we don't want, right? And we're working on that. That's what we do. We constantly refine our management practices. Elsewhere, battles over proposed artificial fields are playing out. In Martha's Vineyard, the school district is suing the city for prohibiting an artificial field from being installed because of concerns that it would contaminate the aquifer from which the town draws its drinking water. Meanwhile, voters in Malden, just north of Boston, may settle a heated debate over a proposed artificial field. Just to be clear, I don't know. Like I said, I don't know if installing an artificial field would actually result in contamination of the aquifer. They're not saying that there's any evidence to support that. So even though I tend to agree with it, I'm still on the same side as I always am. Is like, well, show me why should I be convinced that's true? It may be true, but it might not be true. So just even in cases where I favor the position, we still have to hold some sort of critical thinking limit. And so, okay, well, I'm in favor of that, but still, I need something to support that. And they haven't provided it. In Portsmouth, New Hampshire, I don't know how to pronounce that. City officials thought they had ordered a PFAS-free artificial turf field, but later testing revealed that it contained high levels of the chemicals. So I don't know let me see if this is actually an article. Let me see. Let me go back to me. See what this. Yeah, so this is just another article. They don't actually show the results of that. So I'm not going to go over it, but they said they had a study and revealed that it did have PFAS in it. A state-level proposal to ban artificial turf recently failed in Massachusetts. And public health advocates and legislatures in other states are planning to propose a ban on the material, though they declined to say on the record which state until the proposal is introduced. Artificial turf is made with several layers, including plastic grass blades, plastic backing that holds the blades in place, and infill that weighs down the turf and helps blades stand upright. Until recently, infill was made with recycled rubber tires called crumb rubber. However, independent and Environmental Protection Agency testing found the materials contain high levels of dangerous chemicals. It seems kind of nonsensical to put ground-up tires in a field where children are playing, said Kyla Bennett, a former EPA official and director of science policy at Public Employees for Environmental Responsibility. Some companies have begun using cork as infill, but industry has said the grass blades are backing cannot be made without PFAS. So they're saying the industry has said that it can't be made without PFAS. Well, if the industry is acknowledging it, then there seems to be more credibility that they actually do contain high levels of that. PFAS or per and polyfluoroalkyl substances are a class of about 12,000 chemicals often used to make products resist water, stain, and heat. They are called forever chemicals because they don't naturally break down and are linked to cancer, liver problems, and thyroid issues, birth defects, kidney disease, decreased immunity, and other serious health problems. PFAS can be absorbed through the skin, inhaled, ingested, or get in open wounds as they break off from plastic blades, and children are considered more vulnerable to exposure because they are smaller and their bodies are still developing. Some manufacturers have claimed the amount of PFAS used in artificial turf isn't high enough to be dangerous, or that they use safe PFAS. Independent research has shown time and time again that synthetic turf systems provide many community benefits and continue to meet and exceed regulatory standards for human health, safety, and performance. The Synthetic Turf Council and industry trade groups said in a statement to The Guardian. Well, I wouldn't put a whole lot of confidence in something the Synthetic Turf Council said about their product. It's like when there's a problem with, I'll leave all the names out of it, but right now, as we sit here today, this is actually going on. But it's like the university, if they have a sexual complaint, what do they call it? It's harassment. If they have a sexual harassment claim against a faculty member, and the university investigates itself and finds out that it didn't do anything wrong. I mean, come on. Of course they're going to find out they didn't do anything wrong. You need to have an independent analysis or an independent investigation done, And this is actually going on right now. Not in here, maybe going on in Kentucky, but I know of one case in the Northeast, Northish East, where there was a problem with a faculty member, and the university did an investigation. And we investigated ourselves, and we found we didn't do anything wrong. So it's the same thing here with the Synthetic Turf Council. Well, everything's fine. There's nothing wrong with what we provide. It's not high enough. Well, it may not be, but I wouldn't have much confidence in something coming from the company that actually is benefiting from its sales. But no studies have been completed on how PFAS or other chemicals move from artificial turf to children, so the industry doesn't know if it's safe. Evans said, moreover, the fields are another of a myriad of potential daily exposures to PFAS in consumer products, food, and water, Evans said. That's a horrible argument. Is that the guy? Is that the person from? Which one was Evans? Was he or she from the? Let me see where Evans was. Which side this person was on? I don't see which one. I don't see which side Evans is on. But regardless, that's a horrible argument. Let me read that again. That's great. But no studies have been completed on how PFAS or other chemicals move from artificial turf to children. So the industry doesn't know if it's safe, Evans said. And then it says, moreover, this isn't a quote from them. Maybe this is from Evans or from the author. The fields are another of a myriad of potential daily exposures to PFAS in consumer products, food, and water. So what they're saying is, it may come from this, but you also might get it from your food and water. That's called the tu quoque fallacy. So they're saying, in other words, it's saying, well, if you say, well, you're ugly, well, you're ugly too. Well, that doesn't change the fact that I'm also ugly. In other words, if you're committing a crime or you're committing, let's say you're committing a crime and you go, well, yeah, but they committed one too. That doesn't take away from the fact that you also are committing a crime. That's not an argument. That's funny that they said that. It's just one of many. So I don't know if that's, just one of many. You get it from food and water too. That's horrible. Public health advocates note all PFAS studied have been found to accumulate in the environment and to be toxic to humans. And once in the environment, safe compounds used in manufacturing break down into unsafe chemicals. Again, I don't know if that's true, but testing of multiple artificial fields has found the presence of highly toxic PFAS compounds like 6,2-FTOH and PFOS. The EPA recently revised its health advisory of PFAS to state that effectively no level of exposure in drinking water is safe. So if that's true, or the EPA has stated that no level of the PFOS in drinking water is safe, then they might, there may be some ground to stand on in terms of removing this if they contain PFOSs and it's getting into the groundwater. It's only a matter of time before artificial turf is banned, Bennett said. In a few years, we're going to be asking, how on earth did we ever allow this to happen? I would agree that's probably true with a lot of things we do, right? That's all that article is. But we're going to be going over artificial turf, and I thought that was a bit of an interesting topic to go over today, an article. Because when we get to the Goodell interview, I'll show most of that, and it's just horrible. It's just awful because, he's so completely full of BS. It's insane. So when I get to that, it'll be interesting. It'll be a little while because it'll be when I start actually talking about artificial turf safety versus natural grass safety. So in Boston, basically, a couple years ago, they're banning artificial turf on parks, going back to natural grass for parks, which is probably a very good thing. I tend to agree with that. I wish I knew more about it, but just pointing that out, that in other cities and other locations, they're doing the exact opposite. They're banning natural grass because it requires too much water. No, that grass that you had might require too much water. There's plenty of grasses to choose from that require essentially no irrigation. Maybe you need a little bit to get it growing and get it established, but after that, grasses like Bahia grass and buffalo grass. There's grasses that, they don't look as nice as Bermudas and some of these other grasses, granted, but they will survive. Even some of the Bermudas, they will survive quite well with very, very little water. So this idea of just banning grasses because they use too much water, and then, well, that's fine if you want to xeriscape and do whatever. But if you're going to put in artificial grass because the natural grass is using too much water, you're just going to supplant one potential issue, using too much water, with another potential issue, including adding, potential harmful compounds into our environment. When in reality, you probably could have just consulted with the local turfgrass specialist and found there's numerous turfgrass species and cultivars within species that would probably be very fine and grow very well there with almost no supplemental irrigation.